Hello, how are you? I'm not trying to start a debate on the relevance of Black History Month. Truly, I'm not. You have to believe me. But we are in February, and depending on where you are in the world, the month of February may hold a different significance to you. And even if you're from the same country, city, neighborhood, culture, even, there are huge misconceptions and misunderstandings on the past, present, and future of the Black History Month celebration. In case you didn't know, the father of the celebration is Dr. Carter G. Woodson, Harvard-educated historian, journalist, and author. He was tireless in lobbying to establish Negro History Week as a program to encourage the study of African American history. He dedicated his entire career to the cause. He wrote many books on the subject. The most famous one is The Miseducation of the Negro. Fast forward to today. It's quite simple. There are two teams. I cannot think of a third one. There are two teams. On this side, you have those who think that it is extremely important to honor and celebrate the history, the diversity, and the rich culture of Black people in the USA and in Canada. And I'm not sure where else in the world, but definitely North America. They feel strongly that we need to acknowledge the many everyday contributions of Black communities and individuals. And that until the world turns as it should, we need to keep celebrating it and reminding ourselves of our accomplishments. It is a call to action to make the world a better place for Black people and, as a result, for society as a whole. On the other side, you have the other team who will argue that Black History Month may have been relevant in the past to offset inequalities and injustices, but that in this day and age, huge leaps have been made, and they just find it awkward to have to sit there and listen to the employers or the teachers celebrate it every single year. Some go to the extent of finding that it's insulting that the Black History Month has been reduced to the shortest month of the year. Some will say, I'm Black every day, not just in February, but they feel like it needs to be celebrated all year long, not just for 1 month. Finally, some on the debate team will just say that it serves as a bitter reminder that things are just not working as they should, because if they did, they wouldn't need it anymore. If you stick around until the end, I'll tell you which team I'm a part of. But until then, I have good news. Regardless of what team you're on, I have a little gift for you. I happen to have interviewed dozens of prominent human beings from all races, ages, genders, religions on my Break Time with Patty show. It's all here, really. But in this video, I wanted to share very short, insightful clips of my conversations with 12 Black individuals who made history in the last years and even the last decades by making it to the world stage of public speaking. I can actually state that every single one of them has made the world a better place for you and I and generations to come. Guess what? 12 of them. One for every month of the year, including February. I know it's not possible to make everybody happy, but this is my attempt at doing it. You're very welcome. Without delay, let's start with the first one, Craig Valentine.
Another one of the 52 tips that I would recommend is when you're in speaking, you're in sales, right? So we have to remember not to sell a product or a service or an idea or even change. We got to sell the result. Got to sell the result. And I give an example. I give this example in 52 speaking tips. When I went to buy my first car ever in life, decades and decades ago, went to buy my first car. The salesperson came up to me. He said, "Are you looking at the car?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, great. Let me tell you about it. This car has these types of windows, this type of brake, this type of this type." What's he trying to sell me? The car, right? I just said, never sell a product, always sell the result. So I said, "Thank you, but no thank you. I'm not interested." So I went to a different dealership. Patricia, this was the same day, different salesperson, same car. Now, I got to be honest, this guy must have anticipated where I was emotionally at that point in my life. You know, I was young and single and looking to mingle. So he walks up to me, he says, "Are you looking at that car?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, You're going to look good in that one." He said, you're going to be flying down the road. The wind's going to be blowing through your hair. And the girls, let me tell you, the girls will be all over you. Patricia, what do you think I did?
You bought the car.
That's exactly. I said, where do I sign? Right? He made the sale not because he sold me the car, but he sold me the results. And he lied. I was lonely in that car. I always tell people it was just me and my payment. Right? But I tell people, don't lie, but don't sell the product, the service, the idea, change, or yourself. Always sell the results. You already mentioned 52 speaking tips, right? This is what I do to get people to go to 52 speaking tips. I say, raise your hand if a year from now, you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the speaker you are today. Or if I'm speaking to corporate America or even Canada, I'll say, raise your hand if a year from now, you'd like to be at least 3 times better than the presenter you are today. Oh yeah, all hands go up, right? I said, then great, for absolutely free, for no fee, you can go to one of my websites, which is 52speakingtips.com. That's 52speakingtips.com. And every week for a year, you're going to get an audio lesson from me. And by the end of that year, you will be at least 3 times better than the presenter you are today. Boom. And thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people have gone through 52speakingtips.com. But that gives another point, which is, what did I mention first? Just now, did I mention the product? Did I mention the service? Did I mention the result? Most people say, you mentioned free. That's what you mentioned. You mentioned free. But what I actually mentioned first was the result, right? 3 times better. And so what I tell people is, never sell a product, always sell the result. Always put the result before the resource. And if you're in leadership, always state the result before the request. Because if I did it the way most people do it, Patricia, it would have sounded like this. Raise your hand if you'd like to receive 52 emails from me.
Oh, no, thank you. I'll pass.
No, thank you. I don't think my opt-in rate would be as high, right? So you got to come with the result first and then follow that with whatever the resource is.
Any parting words besides that, Craig?
Yeah, I'll give you one final piece of advice. And this goes to some of the questions you asked about fear and about not thinking they're ready and that sort of thing. You got to be there before you get there, right? You got to be there before you get there. And I'll give you one final example. In the mid-90s, I was an events planner. And one of my jobs, believe it or not, was setting up the stage for the speakers, right? Now you imagine all the while wanting to really be a speaker. So here I am setting up, I'll go into these ballrooms and I'd lay down the power cords and tape them down. And I'd move chairs around and I'd move the lectern up front and I would move more chairs. They used to call me the chairman because I used to move so many chairs. So I was just always in there, but it never failed. And this was like a daily basis. Every time I would walk into one of those empty ballrooms, I would walk up front and I stand behind the lectern and I'd look out and I'd imagine that one day people would show up to see me. And Patricia, I always said the same thing every single time I stood behind the lectern. To myself, I said, today I move the chairs, tomorrow I move the audience. So you got to see it so you can be it. You got to be there before you get there. And I'm moving audiences now.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, you are. As we both mentioned, you're the father of a wonderful 2-year-old little queen called Toriel.
Yes.
And you mentioned, speaking of being fearless, you mentioned in an exchange that you want to teach your daughter to grow up to be a strong woman and that you rather have her be feared rather than be scared.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, those are very strong statements that I totally concur with them. But can you elaborate on why you said that? And can you please share with us how you're raising her to be a powerful and fearless leader?
Okay. So maybe being feared is a bit strong, but I have grown up when I've seen people who've grown up to be scared. And these people, there's a correlation between people who grow up to being scared and people who grow up to be victims. I think the other thing too is sometimes bullies sense if they can pick on you, if you will, or if you can be a victim. However, I've also noticed that people who grow up to be, powerful, strong-willed individuals, etc., and they're rarely picked on. They may be talked about behind their backs, but sometimes people fear them, but they're strong and they're rarely ever like abused in any form. So my time on this earth is limited. I have no, preconceptions about that. And I'm probably not going to be around, for a long time for my daughter. And my goal is to make sure that in my absence, that she can take care of herself, that she's strong, that she's powerful, that, if necessary, if she has to be feared, then so be it. I'd rather have, I want to have a daughter that I have to hold back as opposed to I have to push out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I realize that people may not agree with that, but, since I've been the father of a daughter, it has been horrifying to me, the amount of abuse that women suffer. When I raised my son, I, honestly, wasn't as conscious as aware. Something, one of the reasons we're having this conversation is my mom was abused. However, I didn't find this out until after she had passed away. My mom died, over like 20 years ago. And then, after she's passed away, I hear these stories of the things that took place. For example, she was raped. Never knew that. However, my mom, she did suffer mental breakdowns. On a couple occasions, she was institutionalized. Now, as a kid, when your mom goes to a home like this, it's embarrassing, etc. And it's something you don't want to talk about. And again, I'm already being abused because I'm a stutterer. I don't want my, friends knowing that about this. And the environment wasn't as open as it is today. I mean, today there's an open conversation about mental health. There's an open conversation about abuse, etc. And I wish I had been more aware of that then. But again, I didn't know what put my mom in those circumstances. So the reason, again, I am answering your question, and what I mean is I don't want my daughter to be in those circumstances. If someone is in a situation where they attack her, then I want to be able to take care of herself if there's nobody else around, and by any means necessary. So yes. I want her to be super strong. And again, and abuse is not just physical. It's also, I think the most prevalent form of abuse is mental and emotional. So that's something I definitely want her to be strong and to be able to defend herself against that as well.
When you won that title, it was the first time in history that there was an all-female top 3 winners of the World Championship of Public Speaking. Never, ever happened before. I don't even think that there were ever 2 of them. Anyhow, can you describe what that felt like to be on that podium?
Just girl power, just women's empowerment, showing women that speaking or any gift that you have is not dictated by your sex. It's not dictated by your gender. If you're great at something, don't let it stop you just because you're a girl or a lady or a woman, or typically men are dominating this field, because for many years women couldn't even compete in the World Championship of Public Speaking, or we couldn't join Toastmasters, I believe, for many years. I forget the dates. I used to know them, but I forget the dates. I think it was like in the 70s is when we could join, and I forget, but it was a man thing, and that's okay, and that's fine. But when 3 women took first, second, and third place in the world, I feel like that was just confirmation to any woman anywhere to know that you can do whatever it is that your heart desires. But you have to follow your bliss. Imagine if myself, Sherry Sue, or Anita Faye Taylor would have never written our speeches, or would have shied away from this big stage, or would have cowered because, oh no, we're women and we can't do this, and there haven't been many women winners, so no, we're just not gonna do it. Imagine how many people would be missing out on that inspiration and that encouragement. So many other women. In 2018, so much history was made, but I'm so glad that girls all over the world and women all over the world were able to see that three women of color, technically, 2 African-American women. I identify as African-American. I'm not sure if Anita Faye Taylor does, but I'm sure she does. And then Sherry Sue is a woman of Asian descent, or an Asian woman, are the best speakers in the world. Like, it's just like, come on, women. Anything you feel like you couldn't do, now you know. Now you have permission to do it. Now you have confirmation that you need to do whatever it is that you were put on this earth to do.
Yes, yes. Women, I hope you heard this message. So actually, the speech that got you there was the one rotten apple, right? And
One rotten apple, yes.
it really struck a chord with me, I have to say. The story is the story that many Black men that I know who had encounters with the law enforcement had. So basically, and most of these men, they remain silent and bitter from such encounters. And I'm so grateful that you are using your voice to share your message. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Can you share with us, how do you find your themes, your stories, and also what motivates you to share such impactful and inspirational messages with your audience?
Wow. That particular one rotten apple, I will start with that. I was invited to be a co-host during a men discussion one evening, and during that, we were talking about the issue with George Floyd and many, racial issues that was going on around the world. And the topic was, it was powerful. We had a lot of men who was part of that discussion group. And for some reason, I thought about that experience. And when I began sharing it, letting them know that when I had this experience when I was in high school, that a police officer put a gun to my head, mistaking me for someone who they were looking for. And right in front of my mom opened the door. And when I came out, first my mom called, she called me, and he put the gun to my head, and my mom was frantic. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. And then my mom even tried wedging herself between me and the police gun. And he pushed her to the side, and it really did something to me watching that, even that one incident. But yet I couldn't do anything because I'm looking down the barrel of a gun. And surprisingly, the voice had came over the radio saying, "Suspect has been apprehended, all clear." And this officer just halted his gun and left, and no apology, anything. He just left us there. So I began sharing that during the men discussion, and it was like, wow. And so right after that meeting, a good friend of mine who was a mentor for me in Toastmaster, he said, "Errol, that's your speech. That's your championship speech. I promise you, it will get you to the champion." No way. I'm not sharing that speech. Absolutely not. No, I felt like it was too controversial. I didn't feel it was the right time for it. All kind of thought. He said, "No, that is the speech you need to share." So I pondered on it for days and decided that, you know what? Write it. Because you never know, it may help someone. So I decided to write that speech. But I didn't focus on the negative part of it, but I also focused on the outcome of it, because I met a good friend as the other police officer who really helped encourage me, and he really helped encourage me. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
And when I wrote that speech, I thought of a rotten apple. And because of the controversy that was going on with police officers at that time, it was a very bitter situation, but yet also, how do you help the situation? So when I wrote the speech, One Rotten Apple, I realized that I was delivering a speech to where either it can hurt or help someone. So I focus on trying to help someone who have experienced what I've experienced. And so I did. So One Rotten Apple became the theme.
It was a memorable speech, Errol.
Thank you.
I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But again, you're one of many, right? I don't have to, there's no number. And you're lucky. I'm so happy that you're still alive to share this tale, because often it just turns, you seem to be like a solid man, basically, and very often it's intimidating for the police officers, right? So I find that it often turns negative. So
exactly, it does. It does in some cases, absolutely.
It's because they want to make sure. Yes. Anyhow, I don't need to get into that. I'll let people look at the video, but anyhow, so thank you for sharing this, and thank you for giving a voice to those who cannot speak anymore.
Well, thank you.
Many times you'll find that your fears are easily dismissible and replaceable with healthier fears, fears that are actually going to propel you to be a more impactful speaker.
I feel like saying amen to that. Yes, it's so true. This fear of being judged. Yes, they're not rational necessarily, but they cling to us, right? And they paralyze us, and they're in our way of so many opportunities.
It's a survival instinct, really. And a survival instinct is really about caution. It's about saying, don't get close to the edge of the cliff, rather than, going over the cliff. I'm going on tangents here, but it's a survival instinct. It's your brain trying to ensure that you are as safe as possible, as far away from the edge of the cliff as possible. But the best view is right there at the edge of the cliff. You've got to get up there to the edge of the cliff to get the view. So, yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love this. I'm going to put myself on the edge of that cliff. I have work to do. But yes. One other question I'd like to ask. You are a software engineer as we speak. I guess that's still your job, right?
Right.
Yes. And how do you feel like, because you're a very busy person, how do you see yourself merging the two, like the world champion speaker and the software engineer? How do you feel like these two worlds come together?
Well, I believe there is space for public speaking in every industry. Every industry needs individuals who are able to fluently communicate the ideas of their field. Every industry needs a gateway to that industry, a gateway to the knowledge of that industry. And typically, it's the people who can speak. Those are the people who then share to the world what we're doing behind the scenes. So it's very important to have efficient communication or public speaking as a part of any industry, really. I try not to think of these as uniquely different. I feel that public speaking and the ability to communicate is an indispensable part of my being an effective software developer. Of course, I do take the time out to improve my technical skills. I try to always be doing a course. I try to get stuck as often as I can. And I try to be the source of solutions to the problems I create. So I'm always in this, I believe, vicious cycle that every developer falls into, where it's not working, you don't know why it's not working, you hate everyone, you want to break everything, and suddenly it starts working. You don't know what you did, but it starts working. Then it stops working again, then it starts working later on. And at the end of the day, you realize the solution was much simpler. And it's a vicious cycle, really, of us trying to figure out how to make stuff work. And it's fun, and I enjoy it. And I enjoy explaining how I made things work in the end. So it's absolutely fun.
Yeah.
When I think about the doors that the World Championship has offered, that is to say, I imagine I am going to be speaking more often, and I imagine I'm going to be speaking maybe not necessarily about software development or the processes that we're working with back there, but I have tried to prioritize and to live on a calendar. So I know for sure when I'm speaking, my team knows in advance when I'm speaking, when I can't be available to them. And I try to make sure that I'm not booked too tightly so that one team is deprived of me for an extended period of time. it's really about prioritization at this point.
Yes. Oh, yes. Katy, tell us a little bit more about little Katy. How are you as a child and as you were growing up?
As a child, I was very, very shy and quiet, and I didn't like to have attention on me. But I grew up in a small town where everybody is white and I'm mixed. My father is black, my mother is white. So no matter what I did, attention was really on me all the time. I was really different from other people, and that made me feel bad about myself. And I think that's really what made me have social anxiety from really early on in life, and that it never really got better until I joined Toastmasters.
Speaking of which, what on earth made you decide to join Toastmasters if you were suffering from social anxiety? What possessed you? Like, was it by your own initiative?
Not really. So I found out about Toastmasters on Meetup, and I joined the group, and I told myself that I should go, but then I didn't. And then at work, my boss told me that I needed to speak more in meetings. She told me that at the next meeting, when the boss is there, I'm gonna sit next to you and I'm gonna give you a little nudge, as I said in my speech. And I was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. And she was like trying to help me. She was like, oh, when people are talking, even if you have nothing to say, like you can just say like, yes, I agree with you, good point. And I was like, no, that's not gonna work. So I was like, okay, then I guess I joined Toastmasters. And I told her that I was gonna join Toastmasters, because if I didn't, then I would never have done it. So now that I have told one person, I didn't have a choice to do it. So I did join Toastmasters. The first meeting I attended, it was a special meeting. We were in the park and there was no speech. It was just like table topics and debates, and everybody was like, oh, do you want to participate? And I was like, no, I don't. And even like just at the beginning of the meeting when you have to say like why you're there, like that was just like awful to me. And I was like, I didn't realize that I had to talk. Like, what do I say? Like I was counting like everybody's was all the other guests were talking, and I was like in my head like trying to come up with something. Okay, I'm gonna say this, like, and that was just like awful. And at the end of the meeting, I had to say something else, and I was like, oh yes, I remember saying like, oh, I really liked it, but I didn't like it. I was like, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna come back, but I didn't want to come back. But I still did come back because I told my boss that I was gonna do it, so I did. And it took a few meetings to be like, okay, it's not so bad.
It didn't kill you.
No.
Really, you're here. Fun. Okay, thank you so much. Is there any advice you'd like to share with someone who struggles with holding grudges?
Well, I was mad with that friend while we were in the university, but it happened in 1994 for 2 years until 1996 when I left that city and I came to Lisbon to the internship. We hadn't talked to each other. So when I came to Lisbon, we lost contact. So I had no grudges in my heart, but they were there. I didn't know, but they were there. But when I was reading an article and I saw the Rwandan people, they were forgiving each other. And I said, what? And I didn't forgive my friend for a joke. So when we started talking again, I felt, you know, something out of my chest, like a freedom. What I thought people and I used to say is, we all are human. And human beings, we make mistakes. Period. We make mistakes. So if we have this in mind and try to forgive ourselves, forgive each other, maybe we could have a better world. Maybe. Just maybe. Who is me? You know, I know nothing, but just maybe we could have a better world, because we are human beings and we make mistakes a lot.
Absolutely. I have nothing else to add to this. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself when you were a boy, a teenager, and a young adult, please?
Absolutely. I grew up in a single parent household. My mother raised me and my sister all by herself. She was really a person who instilled in me a love of education and learning and wanting to learn more. She was a college professor. So it's funny, she was one of the first public speakers that I really got to experience, just watching her teach her students in her classrooms. But growing up, I was a very shy kid. I'm even a shy person today, even though some people will be surprised to learn that I'm very shy, I'm very introverted. But back when I was younger, it was 10 times what it is today. I did not want to be in the spotlight. I did not want to stand up in front of a crowd. If I could just be in the background, in the shadows, that would be the perfect situation for me. But having a mother who is, I wouldn't say, she's definitely not shy. Let's just say that. My mother is anything but shy. She will tell you what she is thinking. She will be boisterous about it if she wants to be. So she would want me to be in these situations, and I didn't want to do it. I remember one of my first bouts with public speaking was when I was about 7 years old. And my mom, she's driving us to church one day and she says, I had this great idea. I'm going to have my son stand up in front of the entire church congregation and read a passage from the Bible. And now when I learn of this, I'm thinking to myself, this woman must be crazy. But obviously you can't tell her that, because growing up in households like ours, that could lead to some trouble. Let's just say that. So I had to decide, am I more afraid of public speaking, or am I more afraid of facing an angry mother, AKA death? So I chose to speak. And I remember being up there in front of that crowd. I remember my body was shaking uncontrollably. It was the first time I had ever experienced this. And I'm thinking to myself, why is my body moving by itself like this? But it was because of the nerves. It was because of the fear of public speaking. That was my first encounter with fearing public speaking. Then we fast forward and I go into middle school. I'm about to graduate, and the valedictorian has to give a speech at the graduation. And I think to myself, hey, that's a great idea, because, hey, I'm not the valedictorian. I'm not the top of my class. I wasn't the second best. I wasn't the third best. I was the fourth best in my class. I thought that I would be safe. But then my teacher, his name was Mr. Zane, he just had this brilliant idea. And he said, hey, we should have speeches from the top 4 students. And that's when you start to learn that life isn't fair. Because here I am sitting at 4th in the class, and yet I still have to give a speech. This shy, introverted person has to give a speech, even though he doesn't want to. But I can't say no to this teacher. I can't say no because my mom is, hey, hell yeah, you should do that. Go, go, go. So I get up in front of that crowd. I would say it was about 200, 300 people in that auditorium that day, the largest crowd that I'd ever spoken to at that time. And again, my body was shaking uncontrollably. My heart is pounding. I literally grabbed onto the lectern and held it in a death grip mostly the entire time. I probably read through that speech faster than anything that I've ever read through in my life. There was zero eye contact. And in fact, there was one point where I mentioned one of my teachers, and just the mention of his name, he started to get applause. And when that happened, I'm just looking at the audience like, why are you clapping? Shut up, stop this, do not prolong this. And then I sit down and I'm just thinking to myself, I hope I never have to do that again. Then we get to high school. I'm not anywhere near valedictorian. I'm nowhere near fourth best in my class. I was not a very good high school student. I'll just say that. I thought I was free from having to speak, but for some reason, my principal, her name was Mrs. Pelzer, she has this brilliant idea. And she says that we should teach all of the seniors public speaking. And so I have to go into this class and do public speaking. But the funny thing is, the public speaking course was only supposed to be for half of the year. But something happened where they messed up my classes, and I actually ended up having to take classes with younger classmen for the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, they realized, oh, wait, we made a mistake. Put Aaron with the seniors. And so I had to take a full year of public speaking where everybody else only had to do half a year. And I thought to myself, I asked my teachers and I said, hey, I did a lot of this stuff before. Can you just let me pass? Because I did it before. He said, nope. So I had basically 2 courses worth of public speaking classes, and where others only had to do a half of that. So it was very annoying to me. I'm thinking that public speaking is like that person who really likes you, but you don't like them back, but they can't take the hint.
Yeah.
That's what public speaking was for me. And it was extremely annoying.
I also think this is something that I am supposed to do. I love speaking. And I think that when you do something that you like to do, that you want to do, that's productive, like Patty Pat's journey, you are doing what you are meant to do. This is my opinion. I also think that when you do what you're meant to do, you share your gift, it creates ripple effects. And different people are touched by it. One real quick story. When I was in the 6th grade, there was a kid that brought a magazine to school. It was called Muscle Builder Power, which later became Muscle and Fitness, a bodybuilding magazine. So from him bringing that magazine to school, I was like, man, I want to be a bodybuilder. And I started lifting weights back then. Lifting weights, of course, took me to the gym. I continued lifting weights over the years, and I wound up helping a lot of my friends to work out and to lose weight. I wound up meeting some lifelong friends at the gym. I wound up meeting my wife at the gym. And of course, we have 3 kids. 2 of them lift weights. That's probably as a result of what I used to really be into it. I'm not so much anymore, but they lift as a result of probably my influence. I have nephews that lift as a result of my influence. And all this happened because, if you think about it, it's because a kid brought a magazine to school when I was in 6th grade. So all these people are touched by this because of that one thing. When we put ourselves out there, when we put our gift or whatever out in public, different people will be touched by it. And I think we're serving our purpose by that, and it creates ripple effects. And that's another reason why I like to share these stories and speak in public.
If our friend at home is filled with regrets and believes their life is an irreparable mess, hopeless mess, and what advice would you like to share with them right now, Mark?
I mean, hit the cross a line here, but that's okay, because there have been times I have felt I should have done better. I have made a mess of things, and that is part of the human condition. I'm no psychotherapist. I'm no psychoanalyst. I'm no psycho anything. I'm not a psycho, but I do know that it's normal to feel that way when things don't go well. I heard some wonderful advice from Tom Hanks, the actor, the famous actor. He says, if things go badly, remember, this too shall pass. When things go really, really well, this too shall pass. Because life is a journey of hills and valleys, ups and downs. One thing I do that helps me when I'm facing my lows is I rehearse, I recall, I remember the good things I've done, the lives I've touched, the people I've impacted. I remember the blessings I have received, and I remember the times I've been a blessing to others. If I could do it back then, I can do it again. I'll repeat that. If I could do it back then, I can do it again. And for me, and this is personal, I rely heavily upon my closest, my circle, my wife, my kids, dear friends to me, and also my faith. I'm a Christian by faith, and by no means do I want to tell anybody you must do what I do. I'm sharing with you how I was raised, what I grew up seeing, the blessings I've seen, the miracles I've seen, the healing I've received. So I lean heavily upon my faith, my Christian faith, upon my circle, which is very, very small, and upon the memory of what not only I have done, but what I believe God has done in my life before. And I hold on to the promise, if he can do it back then, he can do it again. If I can get through it back then, I can get through it again. That's where I am. And I also want to add one more thing. There is never shame in asking for help when you need it. Sometimes you may need somebody who's professional to counsel you, to walk with you through a difficult season, to advise you. You know, back in the day, the idea of going to a counselor or a therapist was, oh, you're crazy, you're losing your mind. Ooh, you're going to see a therapist? Ooh, what's wrong with you in therapy? But 21st century, we come to understand it's a good thing to have someone to talk to who is neutral, who can offer a perspective you often can't see because you're so close to it. You're in it. Your mind's in it. Choose your circle carefully, and don't be ashamed or afraid to ask for help when you need it. For me, I trusted my faith, and I also recall what happened in the past, and I look forward to seeing it again. That's what gets me through it. I hope you found a way to get yourself through difficult times, and I hope this is helpful to somebody out there right now who may be in a tough spot at this particular moment.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing those beautiful words of wisdom. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And,
the reality is it's not about entertaining 100 people in a room. That's not what you should be doing as a speaker. It would be nice. It would be great if everybody in the room walks out there and they go, wow, because as speakers, we always want to leave them wanting more. But what is really important is that one person that's in that room that comes up to you after everybody's left with emotion on their face, tears maybe in their eyes, or a big smile because you made them laugh or you made them feel good, and walks up to you and says, oh my God, I needed to hear this today. You have no idea how important your speech was to me today. That, for me at least, and I'm pretty sure with other speakers, they'll say the same, but for me, that is a success. When I come off stage, whether it's virtual or in person, and somebody can come up to me afterwards or send me an email or come up to me in person and say, my goodness, I needed that. This is exactly what I needed. I'm going through this. I'm going through that. Can I share a quick story with you?
yes, we have all the time in the world. Do share.
This was a few years back in person. I was doing a speech, and the theme of the speech was about your fears, facing your fears. And I talked about an incident that happened to me, a very funny story, but it was a scary story at the same time. And I talked about from the fact that we have to accept our fears and try to change it so that we can take that fear and fuel it into motivation, into inspiring, into learning how to accept our challenges. There was a gentleman in the room when everybody left, and he walked up to me and he said, I wasn't going to come here today, but your pictures were posted all over the office here, and they were talking about you coming here. And I didn't know who you were, but I figured, okay, I'll come and see who this gentleman is. And he said, I am so glad that I came here. At 4 o'clock today, I'm supposed to be going to my lawyer's office and divorcing my wife, signing papers to divorce my wife. Because I always blamed her for the demise of our relationship. I always thought it was her fault, and I thought that there was no way we can repair it. After hearing your story about fear, I realized that I was the one who was afraid of what I had become. I was the one that was blaming her for my fears, my insecurities, the things that were wrong within my life that I did not deal with, and I put it on her. So today, I'm going to go to that lawyer's office and I'm going to tell her we are going to reconcile and try to work things out. And it's because of your speech. What? To me, that is the success of going to that meeting. It's not everybody that patted me on the back and said, oh my God, loved your speech. You're so amazing. You're great. Loved it. Wow. Absolutely great. See you later. Goodbye. No, that guy. It's that guy that had something going on in his life and he related it to what I was saying. And the greatest speakers, including my good friend, Verity Price, who won this year, has stories that sometimes you will often hear people come up and say, I needed that. I needed that story. My stories that I did in the World Championships this year, I had so many people coming up to me and reaching out to me and saying, I'm going through that. I had that happen. Thank you for sharing. Those are the moments for me as a speaker that resonate and stay with me and are right here in my heart. Those are the ones.
Yes.
So if you are a speaker out there, understand how valuable your life lessons are. And don't be afraid to share it because you think somebody's going to laugh or not understand. Share it because you know that there will be somebody in that audience that needed to hear it and they wanted to hear it. And that's what will change their own lives, possibly from where they are right now to becoming a better and brighter part of their life. That's all it takes. That's all it takes sometimes.
Everybody say amen. Amen. And I have to say, Roger, I lost 2 family members in December just now, and one was closer to me than the other, okay, let's say, but and it really broke me, I have to say. And I sort of went in productivity mode because I was trying to coordinate funerals and everything. I haven't come out to talk about it yet because I'm not prepared. I want to keep it emotionless here, so it's not the place for this. I need to work through my grief. But I follow you on LinkedIn, on social media, and you posted a short video on, you called it Just Breathe. And I watched it, and I have to say, it literally made me cry. I became so emotional because I realized since that person died in my arms that I had not breathed, not once. And it was the first time in weeks that I actually managed to breathe. So this is the kind of impact that you have on people. And this is why I thank you for this.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So many gems. Thank you so much. And is there any last story you'd like to share, Roquita?
I would say, remember that your voice is so powerful. The words that we speak, like the Bible says, there really is life in the tongue, like the power of life and death in the tongue. So decide how you will use your voice today. I don't think anybody sets out to use their voice for destruction nowadays, not consciously, not if you want to be a professional speaker or just a speaker, period. You don't have to be like someone who's doing a speaker circuit, but wherever you are, use your voice just to be a force for good. Whatever it is, do it with excellence. You have the power. Somebody may have heard the same message from somebody else, but for some reason, when I hear it from you, it hits differently. They actually really heard it and let it sink into them, and it caused a change in them. It stirred something differently in them because they heard it from you. So I would say remember that, because a lot of people speak about the same things, but I truly believe there is an audience God has assigned to each of us. I may have heard something from somebody else, but for some reason, when I heard it from you, it hit me differently. So use your voice, speak up. Don't be afraid not to, because you think you're incompetent or because someone else talks about the same thing you do. No, they can't do it like you. They can't do it like you. You will have your own perspective, your own experiences that you're going to bring to this discussion, to this topic. You're going to have your own stories. So it doesn't matter who else talks about it. No one can do it like you. So don't bury your voice. Don't bury your talent. You know, refine your talent. If you think you need help, just get the help that you need. It's out there.
Well, there you have it. I hope you found this compilation helpful, insightful, and refreshing. Actually, I would love to hear from you, to know what you enjoyed the most, what annoyed you, whatever you want to talk about. Just talk to me. Put something in the comments. That's the only way for me to improve and get better. So let me tell you, I told you I would tell you what team I'm on. My team is, actually, let me backtrack. I've been on both of those teams throughout my life. Right now, I'm at a point where I feel like, yes, it was definitely relevant in the past. And it is still relevant today for a simple reason that you can't take away a candy, you know, even if, let's say, you don't care about it, but it means something to somebody else. So imagine you take away, I don't know, take away the Christmas celebration, take away the Ramadan, take away something that you're used to having, and somebody says, you know what, some people feel it's irrelevant, let's take it away from you. It will cause a revolution, an uproar, the end of the world maybe. So you know what, I'm a person of the peace. Let's just leave the celebration. Who wants to celebrate it? Celebrate it. Whoever doesn't want to celebrate it, just don't celebrate it. You don't have to show up to those meetings. So I'm for peace. So I'm for keeping it. And why not? Yes, I do believe that. Okay, actually, I do want to say something else on the subject. What I find annoying is that I do feel like people should be recognized the entire year. And I think people mean well when they want to congratulate or highlight somebody, you know, that they know who happens to be Black, for instance. But why does it have to be in February? No, okay, sure, do it in February, but just try to make sure to like remember they exist in July as well. That's all. July, December, October, just random months. That's all. And yeah, that's just my take on this. I hope I didn't ruffle any feathers, but if I did, let me know. Reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you. Do let me know if you like this compilation by putting your thumbs right here or somewhere around there. And if you really, really liked it, share it with someone. Share the love. Maybe someone can be touched and moved by one of the messages by one of those fantastic speakers. Thank you so much for your time, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.